Okay, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar. And I am Pamela Onishi, and I will be the moderator today for the webinar. And just a little bit of housekeeping. I would like to go over the program with you. This will be the flow of our program. Uh, I will be giving an overview after this introduction of of the concept of artistic thinking in the schools, and then after that, we'll have like four speakers, who actually uh, share with you specific research findings to contextualize this concept of artistic thinking. Um, First, we will have Dr. Kek Billion, who will share about visual art and teachers, and followed by Dr. Karen Carino, who will be sharing something on dance, and then Dr. Jennifer Wong, who will share us about theater or drama. And after the presentations, the brief presentations, which will be about 10 to 15 minutes, then we will have our panel discussion where we will go over some questions that we feel are pertinent to respond to regarding artistic thinking. After that, we will have the Q&A session where we will address your questions. And if you have any question that we cannot you please use the toolbar in your Zoom. You will see it at the bottom. There's a Q&A toolbar there. So at any point, during the talk, you can actually post your questions, and then we will collect them and address them during the Q&A session. Okay. And if you face any technical issues in using any of the functions, please, or not hearing us clearly or anything of that sort, please address your questions to, please email oer.hubs@nie.edu.sg. Okay? All right. So let me move on to my presentation, to the introduction. Sharing my screen here. All right, I hope everybody's seeing my screen here. Okay, so let's talk about artistic thinking. I just thought that this would be good to open up this concept and to really ask, what is it? Really, what is artistic thinking? And what do we mean when we say artistic thinking? I would like to start first, okay, with responding regarding what society and economy needs to thrive in the unpredictable future, because I think this is relevant and its relationship to artistic thinking. I would like to respond to that question using what policymakers, educators, and practitioners say about this. Now, this is what we have, okay, from the literature. I think they say that the post-industrial and the globalized economies of the 21st century, we require now this different, distinct set of knowledge and skills that are necessary to compete in the increasingly knowledge-based society. So we've moved on from just the skills-based to having more knowledge-based education. So this is what we need. But what do we mean, with knowledge-based education? What are the skills? They refer to different things. For instance, the European Commission calls these key competences. Okay, so they have equivalent basis of what knowledge should be learned, what skills and what attitudes. And of course, we are familiar with 21st century skills and the associated four C's of communication, collaboration, creativity, and criticality or critical thinking there. And of course, under 21st century skills, according to P21, that we need to hone our digital literacy, and of course, some other career and life skills. And there are also accompanying assessment and teaching, skills that teachers need to have in order to deliver these outcomes to our students. And Gardner, um, of course, if those of you are familiar with this, he says that there are actually the five minds of the future. Okay, so these are the five minds of the future that's saying disciplining, synthesizing, creating, having respectful and ethical minds. And of course, in OECD, they also refer to these skills. And what are these skills? These are skills that are critical to our personal growth and well being of the future societies. So, in short, what does it mean that to be well educated in this current milieu and in the future means having all of these four skills? And what are those specific competencies that we're talking about? First, we see that our students or our workforce needs to be self-directed learners. They have to be critical thinkers, creative thinkers, and problem solvers. They also said that they should have very good communication skills and they have to be innovators and initiators, having some kind of a leadership as well. And somebody who knows how to collaborate, with others. It's no longer sufficient to be working alone during this globalized age. Collaboration is very central. And we need to have this kind of flexible, type of minds in the way we work and the way we think and the way we deal with people. And closely related to that is, in short, we have to be adaptable to situations and socially responsible as well. And related to that is we have to be accountable in our own with our own actions, in our own decisions that we make. We also need, you know, uh, thinkers or students and workers who are very cross-cultural, meaning we just don't focus anymore on our own cultures or in where we grew up in and what we are familiar with. We need to know others as well and be able to empathize with them. And we need to be very productive and I would say active, in the things that we do. Um, and of course, we have to be information media and ICT literate. And I think this is a very important, especially now during this COVID-19 season where everything is being done virtually as we are doing right now in our Zoom presentation. So all of these skills, right, very complex type of skills. Now they say also that arts education is seen they say that they foster these skills that we need and this kind of dispositions that are necessary for this future knowledge-based society. So this is the claim, and there are a lot of studies that attest to this one. But what are the evidences? I guess that's the important thing. The thing is, facts about the literature is there is this meta synthesis that actually reveal that yes, there are evidence-based studies that the arts actually nurture skills, including our intelligent quotient, verbal skills, geometrical reasoning. However, these studies are correlational, that they're saying, and therefore, research writers say they are not conclusive. So, in short, we don't have a causal evidence yet that actually links arts education in terms of research to all of these things: the academic performance, the nurturance of creative and critical thinking, and the social and behavioral skills. So maybe we should ask now, so what are we here for? What is this webinar for? Okay, if the arts actually, there are no conclusive evidences and there are no causal research and no links yet that have been done, well, our answer is this. I think this is a little bit of how we should understand research and how it's done. These evidence-based research that we have right now in the arts that shows all of this impact, they actually contain very thoughtful discussions, okay, very detailed ones in which intricate cases that gives us a glimpse of specific context, okay, and actual outcomes that happened, in those whether they be individuals or a group of individuals. And this empirical research, okay, are largely at the personal level. We say that the impact of the arts is at the personal level. And so we need to have some methodologies that actually uncover this in personal perspectives. And in research, we have a methodology that actually addresses that, and this is the qualitative methods. And if you're familiar with both quantitative and qualitative, which I'm sure most of our viewers would be, or participants would be, um, we know that the causal link that is being referred to in the literature is largely those experimental and quantitative methods, which are important, but we're just saying that what the arts have actually given us are very appropriate, the methods that we use, okay, because we really need to be at this personal level, okay, we really need to have this kind of like a descriptive and thoughtful kind of like discussions to talk about what artistic thinking is. And it's very, very compatible to the kinds of study that we see now, in the arts. According to Stake, this qualitative approach is actually distinguished because of its integrity of thinking. There's no one way of thinking, and it is interpretive, experience-based, situational, and personalistic. These are descriptions that actually we would also use to describe the effect or the impact of arts. What is art? Okay, it's also very experience-based, it's interpretive, it's situational, personalistic. Thus, the research largely, um, they say, are correlational, and a lot of them are qualitative. Okay, so now we ask what is important now about this current research that we have in educating for the future. Okay, what did this research tell us? So before I go into that, I would like to make a distinction. There are two types of education that we are talking about when we speaking of art. There's the arts education on the one hand, and there's the arts in education. Okay, they're sort of like mutually exclusive, but they are actually interrelated as well. What is arts education? Arts education, to put simply, is learning in the arts. So you learn using the arts, you learn within the domain of each arts in music, in dance, in drama, okay, in visual art, and you develop skills in those. And also you develop the unique ways of thinking that are very domain specific or is very specific to those art forms. That's arts education. Now, arts in education is learning through the arts. Okay? And the aim of this is enhancing academic achievement and possibly promoting these kinds of cognitive transfers of the ways of thinking that we get from learning through the arts to the other subjects. So that's arts in education. Now, what does it matter? It doesn't really matter whether you are doing arts education or arts in education, because both of these, what is important, and this is the emphasis that we are going to highlight in this webinar, is the associated thinking that comes with these artistic processes. Okay, when you engage, whether you engage through the arts, with the arts, or in the arts. There are ways of thinking and associated thinkings and behavior in those. And that is the one that contributes to educational theory, research, and practice. That's actually the one that nurtures all of those qualities that we have discussed that are important for the future knowledge-based society. So what is artistic thinking? Artistic thinking based on what I've just discussed, these are the habits of mind. This is what you call the hidden curriculum in arts education and in arts in education. It's very important that we find out first what the arts actually teach and what our students actually learn before we can even talk about any transfers, and we can even talk about doing any of those causal, links, direct causal links for the arts. And that's why we have a lot of these studies. The studies that we are producing now are actually very important in contributing to this end. So, what do the arts actually teach? I'm just giving you an overview here. Later, we will hear more specific examples. They're based on the book, that we have. These are the evidences. First, there's evidence that if you participate in a music band, yeah, the author showed that they actually developed the four C's, which are the creativity, critical thinking, and communication and collaboration. There's a study that says that music-based activities actually became a catalyst for relationship building, and it's a means for students for self-expression and actually self-regulation for at-risk students. And it also becomes a resource for self-transformation. And there's a study that talks about how teachers actually who engage in using aesthetic principles, they engage in this reflective practice, and in turn they have sensitivity, of seeing, they analyze, a detailed analysis, they have careful decision making, and they have this courage to allow students to experiment. And Gillian will tell us more about this in her talk. And of course, so we have another one that also says that the teachers actually, those who want to practice, practice this kind of like artistic thinking, inquire and investigate their own practices, which is a very important actually for teacher professionalism. And of course, we have play building, which Jennifer will elaborate later on, that allows that have evidences that the disadvantaged children actually were able to reimagine and rethink their identity and their agencies, and shift their perspectives about the way they shape their future. Okay, so these are the things that they get just from learning in and through the arts. But how do we nurture these things? So we nurture this through quality arts education pedagogy in schools. So the quality is very important. It's not just incorporating art, it's not just making artwork, and then you will have all of this. No, you gotta have quality arts education. And what is quality arts education? It is actually equivalent to the mutual interaction between, or the interplay between the structures. You have to have that, you have to have a good structures of learning, and as well as a method or approach for your teaching. If you have these two, then the quality will come. It is not equivalent to the content. So content doesn't give you quality arts education. It's really the structures and your methods. And from the research that we have presented in our book, we have these methods and structures of learning that actually work. First, we have this arts inquiry integration, which actually structures the learning that shifts from facts, just learning from facts, to meaning making. And then we have the research and inquiry based approach in dance. Karen Carino will speak more about this later on, and where they incorporate a lot of observing, documenting, investigating, conceptualizing, exploring, experiments, and of course, making and developing. And then there we have what we call the Work It Out Dance framework, that actually nurtures self reflexivity. And this is very play based, it's a process oriented, and its emphasis on the creative self-expression and works very well for teenage females regarding the way they look at and shape their images as a young woman. And of course, we have the community music-based structures of learning, which is based on community music and which features these seven types of learning within the classroom. They highlight authentic, creative, critical, collaborative, active, oral learnings, and pattern-based types of learnings. There's the informal learning as well in music, where collaborative creativity becomes central, that students learn by ear, they take ownership, and everything is based on their interests and they pursue their own interests. That's the way um, the, the lessons are structured. There is this aesthetic teaching that we call, which is a multisensory, a productive, it's a creative, and then it's a multifaceted and motivational types of approaches, inside the class. We also have the arts integration engagement model, which allows students to imagine, to explore, to reflect, to create, and also have these multiple options for representation. And this is very good. This study has found that it's very good for at-risk students. And of course, we have the museum education. So this one is a blending, different contexts of learning from formal to informal and non-formal. So um, in doing all of these structures, then we bring out those outcomes that we have mentioned earlier. So just to end and summarize my short video presentation, so what we mean, artistic thinking in the schools refers to these habits of mind that you nurture through specific pedagogical practices, and that this can result in the engagement in, through, and with the arts. And of course, this teaching and learning can take place with the arts, or you can integrate it, a component of the math to master other subjects. And this can manifest in all forms of learning contexts, formal, informal, and non-formal, provided that the teaching methods and the learning structures are rooted in the processes of creating and engaging in the art forms. So that's my presentation, and I hope that gives you a whole idea of what artistic thinking is and some of their benefits and the types of learning that we expect. So now I'm going to move on to our next speaker. Okay. I would like to introduce Dr. Kat Billion. Dr. Kat Billion is a senior lecturer from the Visual and Performing Arts Academic Group in the National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. Um, so she teaches pedagogy modules in the undergraduate, postgraduate diplomas, professional development, and master's programs. And before joining NIE, Billion taught in secondary schools and served as a curriculum officer in the Curriculum Planning and Development Division at the Ministry of Education. She continues to collaborate actively with MOE and other arts agencies in research and programs development. Her research focuses on art teacher education and teaching practices in Singapore classrooms. So, Billion?
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Pamela, for the introduction. Right, okay, so let's get on with my sharing. Okay. All right. So once again, thank you for coming here, and it is my pleasure to be here and share with you on the topic art teachers as reflective practitioners in the classroom. As you can see from this second slide, um, based on Elliot Eisner's code, And I think that his quote aptly captures the importance of perception in improving education as it is in art making. And in my sharing today, I will be arguing the importance of reflection in one's professional practice, whether if one is an artist or a teacher in the classroom. My presentation today is part of my larger doctoral study, which explores beginning art teachers' initial teacher education experiences in the context of Singapore and examines the relationships between initial teacher education and beginning art teachers' teaching practices immediately upon their completion of their training. Using 5 case studies of beginning art teachers in 5 different government secondary schools here, data collected included schemes of work, lesson observations, and semi-structured interviews. The data centered on understanding teachers' learning during initial teacher education, their views on their overall experiences, and the ways teacher education relates to their current teaching practices. The capacity to reflect critically emerged from the findings as one key component that bridges theory and practice for beginning art teachers. The findings also suggest that beginning art teachers' pedagogical content knowledge hinge heavily on their ability to critically reflect on the complex situational variables they experience in the classroom, together with their interpretation and use of theoretical knowledge that they had acquired during their coursework. The findings from this study reveals the need to strengthen student teachers' capacities in reflective practice, a key quality that is critical for art teachers in their own artistic thinking and teaching, as well as future development of their students as artistic learners. The most common teacher education program design relies on the application of theories model. This model assumes that teachers have to acquire knowledge that is essential for effective teaching. This type of knowledge is usually known as formal knowledge and includes general theories and research-based findings on a wide range of foundational and applied topics that together constitute basic knowledge about teaching. Thus, theory is often seen as the opposite of practice, and it exists outside the context, which is usually the classroom. The relationship between knowledge and practice here is one of both. And the assumption is that the greater and deeper the knowledge that teachers have, the more effective they will be at teaching. However, there are challenges to such a model of teacher education. The problem with most empirical research on knowledge for effective teaching underplay the contextual variables of the complex, context-specific behaviors of teachers. There are limited generalizable results on teacher effectiveness, and by zooming in on the so-called variables of effective teaching, one loses sight of the complexity and interdependency of teacher behavior as a whole. This unfortunately often lead to the theory practice gap that beginning teachers experience when they are in the classroom. The discourse of teacher education has in recent times come to include the notion of teacher being reflective practitioner. With copious research carried out in the domain of learning, the classroom has come to be understood as a dynamic place where students of varying abilities and interests congregate to learn in a social environment that is complex and shifting. As a result, teaching is considered ineffective if teachers just apply what they have learned in teacher education schools without much thinking and deliberation, since each classroom presents different conditions for teaching. Teachers need to be thoughtful in the application of their knowledge and skills, as knowing how to do something no longer suffice. Effective teachers are those who think while they act and continue to think even after the actions are completed. Such a capacity to engage in reflective thinking will allow teachers to actively refine their practices to address the often unpredictable and highly complex nature of the classroom. One of the earlier writings on reflective practice came from John Dewey. In his work, How We Think, John Dewey described in details the close relationships between thinking and reflection. According to Dewey, reflective thoughts aim at beliefs and involves conscious inquiry into the nature, conditions, and bearings of the beliefs. He sees reflective thinking as good thinking, where there is active, persistent, and careful consideration of any belief or supposed form of knowledge in the light of the grounds that support it, and the further conclusion to which it tends. Donald Schoen's work focuses on the limits of technical rationality, which is instrumental problem solving by rigid application of scientific theory and techniques. Schoen argues that in professional practice, one should focus on the idea of problem setting instead and believes that judgment and decision making on features of problem to attend to are what experienced professionals do. Therefore, technical problem solving, according to Schoen, should be within a broader context of reflective inquiry. He proposes that reflection on action and reflection in action should be the focus of professional education. Reflective practice shares many characteristics and similarities with artistic practice. Some of the common characteristics between the two are perceptivity, open mindedness, flexibility of the mind, imagination. Engagement in the arts also involves processes that are very much akin to reflective practice. Operating in contexts that are fluid and without much rules, problem finding and problem setting, editing, and refining of one's judgment are what art teachers are familiar with. So are those processes that professionals engage in daily. The ability to be reflective, whether that be in teaching or any professional practice, and also learning, builds up one's psychological capital. Such mental assets is important, as evident in current times, where changes and new developments are swift and regular. Psychological capital that reflective practice builds would allow novice educators to be ready mentally for very different ways of learning. As Minister for Trade and Industry Chan Chun Sing said in the Straits Times just yesterday, coincidentally, education must evolve to stay competitive and relevant. Lifelong learning, online learning, and on the job learning will characterize current and future education. Reflection in action and reflection on action, to borrow Sean's concepts, when anchored in actual teaching, will provide opportunities for student teachers to learn about one's strengths and weaknesses, and thus opportunities for self growth. This strongly parallels artistic engagement, where the process of creating allows for opportunities for one to learn more about oneself. Reflection requires a holistic perspective on learning and calls for integration of various knowledge bases that student teachers have acquired in the many coursework that they have taken. Most importantly, it is the generation of knowledge, specifically pedagogy content knowledge, that will be deepened and strengthened when beginning teachers' capacity for reflective practice is nurtured. To conclude, reflective practice is at the core of artistic engagement, and student teachers of art, who are likely to have experienced it in their personal arts experiences, must know the importance of reflective practice as art teachers in the classroom. With that, I thank you for listening to this short presentation, and I will introduce the next member, Dr. Karen Carinos. Dr. Carino is an academic, educator, administrator, and advocate. Dr. Karen Carino is from Hawaii, and she has earned 3 dance-related degrees, doctorate in Southeast Asian Studies, in Contemporary Dance Research, Masters of Fine Arts in Dance Performance and Choreography, and Bachelor of Education in dance. Dr. Karen Carino is a trained professional dancer, and her dance career began with Ryrie Woodbury Dance Company, USA. She eventually migrated to Singapore and is currently Vice Dean and Principal Lecturer Dance at Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts. Dr. Carino has published and presented her research that focuses on dance education, performance, and cultural studies internationally. She is a dance advisor to Singapore's government bodies. So let's welcome Dr. Karen Carino and her presentation.
Thank you, Billian, for that introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. And I'm delighted to be sharing with you today about dance choreography. So let's get to it. Okay. Okay. So teaching contemporary choreography, a research and inquiry-based approach, is the title of the chapter that I contributed to the wonderful book that was edited by Pamela. And so just a bit of a background. Teaching contemporary choreography in tertiary education is often about providing practical guidance to develop choreographic principles and skills to express a personal perspective using contemporary dance movement vocabulary. However, it is often less about the topic and more about the skills or the crafting. So Doris Humphrey actually was very, I would say, really ahead of her time, because about 100 years ago, or maybe 80 to 100 years ago, she asked the question, what am I dancing about? Is it worthy in the light of the person I am and the kind of world I live in? But if not, what other kind of dance shall there be, and how should it be organized? So this is a question that has been asked, but nevertheless, choreography classes, yes, or teaching students how to choreograph in a tertiary education setting is often not so much about what they are creating or what about, what is it they're creating about, but more about how to create. And it's about the skills, it's about the crafting, knowing the skills of making dance rather than what is dance about. So rarely about what Doris Humphrey was concerned about. What am I dancing about? However, at my institution, at Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts, we were seeing students as early as 2009 under the direction of Lim Fei Shen, a lecturer, yes, who was teaching choreography, would see students creating works under her directorship that was often about what they read about topics they were concerned about, such as Red Bamboo by Laura Tam. She says her first choreography in 2009 was somehow, she was interested in strong characters in our society, meaning Singapore society, particularly women. And here you can see pictured, yes, is the Samsui woman. And she researched this through the archives, and she also did some other research about through interviews and so forth to contribute to her choreography. Okay, so already she was interested in about her world, right? And it was through Madame Lim Fei Shen who teased out this information, but it was very much instinctual. It was, I would not call it a method yet, okay? And what led me to eventually explore the possibility of developing a method was then seeing Laura more than about 9 years later, yes, right in her artistic statement. This is after she graduated, okay, 9 years hence. She says, exploring my Asian cultural identity through contemporary dance creation, the everyday challenges of society and the community around is what makes me want to create and speak through my dance creation. utilizing contemporary dance techniques such as ballet and contemporary, integrating contemporary Asian dance forms as a tool for expression has always been an approach of mine. I am especially passionate about the multidisciplinary approach to choreograph dance collaborations with music, computing artists, visual artists of contemporary painting, poems, sculpture, and photography contribute to bringing my vision alive, as well as share a part of my culture through this collaborative creating process. Themes that inspire me to continue creating are people, the colorful, unique characters in the world, and the strong individuals surrounding me that shape my beliefs and hope for the future. So it was this that got me to thinking that her early experience through Madame Lim Fei Shen developed her interest and her desire to create this way. And I thought, this is something that perhaps we can continue to foster, but a method, yes, as Pamela had mentioned in her talk, a method and a structure was needed in order for quality dance education, quality dance choreography creation to take place. So while there were different strategies and methods and tools, yes, later, at NAFA, I had developed the teaching of contemporary choreography, to become a dynamic space where students drew from their Asian cultural heritage and encounters through a research and inquiry-based approach to develop critical and creative thinking skills that are deemed essential today. So I chose to use a method that incorporated research and inquiry. So the students that I had featured in my chapter and my research, they said, a personal expression of my heritage and contemporary experience is what this choreography method meant to her. It became a very personal way to express herself. Rather than just the crafting of dance, it now was through the topic, it was delving into her culture that made it a very meaningful experience. And that's Jan Sukalratanasak Pornanong, and also Rochanavagata Supawali said, a personal interpretation and perspective of the world and society today, and can be presented in many different ways. So this is what this choreographic approach meant to her. Okay. So greetings is what came out of Supawali's research, her investigation. And she reflected on her Thai culture heritage as well as her interactions with the Chinese and Malay cultures during her tertiary dance studies at NAFA. Vis-a-vis an encounter with American culture during her one-semester student exchange at Purchase Conservatory of Dance in the USA. She focused her investigation on the social interactions of body language and gestures, the Thai, Malay, and American cultures used to greet, such as saying hello, or depart, such as saying goodbye, as well as thank others, apologize and excuse, pardon oneself, using descriptive analysis. And descriptive analysis involves a way of seeing, a way of observing, as well as documenting. And this she used to transcribe into movement exploration with her dancers. And Sakubatana Sakpornanong created Saturday's Child, and she was particularly interested in featuring Muchalanda, a Thai folk story from Buddhism, which is her religion. So the characteristic symbolism and story of Muchalanda, the Naga king who is believed to have emerged from beneath the earth to protect Buddha in his attainment of enlightenment, was researched through a long interview with scholar and dancer Dr. Siri Rama. So it was through this interview that she gained some knowledge and some perspective, which then she was able to ponder and consider to incorporate into her choreography. So the study of Supawali and Pornanong reveals several points to consider. First, that choreography based on a research approach promotes critical thinking in the process of searching and analyzing information. And research centered on the culture of the creator provides a genuine situation of experience, which is a condition for effective thinking, according to John Dewey. Second, that an inquiry-based approach extends research into choreography through creative thinking, or the process of exploring the possibilities. Research coupled with inquiry and focused on culture produces personally meaningful choreographies for the student choreographers. Through this approach, they address Humphrey's thought-provoking questions, as I mentioned earlier. What am I dancing about? Is it worthy in the light of the person I am and the kind of world I live in? Hence, contemporary choreography informed by a research and inquiry-based approach reflects a more profound understanding. Thank you. Okay, and now I would like to introduce the next speaker, Dr. Jennifer Wong. Dr. Jennifer Wong started her career as a secondary school teacher before going to Singapore Polytechnic, where she was one of the key members who designed and launched the Diploma in Applied Drama and Psychology. She is currently a lecturer at the National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, coordinating the drama program in the Visual and Performing Arts academic group. She also teaches drama education, applied theater, and arts research courses in undergraduate and postgraduate programs. Her interests include participatory arts and child and youth development. And now over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for the lovely introduction. Let me bring up my slides and then we can start the presentation. Okay, hello everybody. I'm here to share about play building or drama processes, theatre making, and how it enables the platform for reimagining and rethinking identities and power with young people. So a quick introduction about this project. This was done, like William, as part of my PhD. This project was done in 2014. It was a 32-hour play building project or theatre making project, as some of us may know it better. The children were underprivileged children from low-income groups, and they were living in subsidized housing known as rental flats. For those of us who are Singaporeans, we will be quite familiar with that. There are 16 children altogether, and they're between the ages of 6 and 12. So all images in this presentation have been treated to ensure that the children remain anonymous because they belong to a vulnerable group. So at the start of the drama process, I was an outsider entering into the space. I worked very closely with AVWO that was situated within the community where these children lived. And as an outsider going in to work with this community, I was very much like the explorer that Talenton and Michaels referred to in this quote. I was trying to get my sense of who are these children and what kind of experiences they have. So what exactly does this new ground look like and who are these inhabitants? I'm going to give you a very quick introduction to who these children are and their backgrounds and the environments that they live in. Out of 16 children, 12 of them did not live with their fathers. One group of children had three siblings in the program, had an intact family. There were 6 children in the family when no one was working, 3 children in families where only one person was working. And the kind of family issues that they faced, there was a whole plethora of different issues. But to highlight some of the kind of problems that they were encountering, one girl's sister had just died 2 weeks ago before the program. 4 of the children's mothers were in drug rehabilitation centers. One of the children was not registered for primary school. This play building program was conducted in March 2014. And by then, most of the children would have already started school, but one of the children who was a 7-year-old was not registered in a primary school yet. So for those of us who are Singaporeans, again, we know that compulsory education starts from P1. So this child, due to family circumstances, had not been registered. There were 15 children out of 16 who were sharing a 30-meter square apartment with more than 6 people. So we can imagine the kind of space or the lack of space that these children encountered on a daily basis in their home environments. So to get to know these children during the drama process, I wanted to start with things that were familiar to them. And so I asked many questions. I asked them, what do you see in your neighborhood? These children had very low literacy levels. Many of them could not speak English very well, and I couldn't speak many other languages besides English and Mandarin. But that somehow worked to my advantage because we were working in drama. So instead of asking them to tell, we did a lot of showing. So in order to tell me what the children saw in the neighborhood, the children performed. And in this image that you see, Ka, who's a 12-year-old boy then, sat on a chair. He lay across the chair. And what you cannot see very clearly in this image is that he had his fingers to his face, like he was smoking a cigarette. And when he was asked to explain, what does this image mean? He said, "Uncle, no work." And then Rat came up to share an image. He brought a chair and he stood on it in response to my question of, what do you see in your neighborhood? And he said, the girl jumped down. And I asked the children, what happens at the playground? Because the playground is the one space where the children spent the most of their time. They were either in school or they were at the communal playground in the residential estate. And the boys performed the arrest of 2 loan sharks that they had just witnessed not very long ago. What else happened at the playground? The children performed images of bullying, images of how they were helpless and they were just bystanders, images of how they didn't know of any other way of getting along with each other in this space that they shared. Cahill warns us that when we perform and we re-perform stories that are the norms or the expectations of the characters that these performers are used to, we run into the danger of engendering stereotypes. We run into the danger of making the participants feel that there's no two ways about it, and that's the only way to be. However, theatre making creates that space. Theatre making or participation in drama creates that space for the participants to experiment, to think and rethink, to reflect on possibilities and impossibilities, because they have that space to play. They have that space to play with different personalities, to play with different kinds of identities, to do things that perhaps in reality they may not have the opportunity or they may not have the space to do. And these are all within the safe confines of fiction, of playing, of make-believe in the drama. So how was the space, how did the drama space enable the process to rethink and reimagine the children's identities and powers through drama? These children at the start of the theatre making program had in their minds that they are children of the circumstances. They are children born in low-income estates. They are children whose parents, guardians, caregivers struggle to make ends meet, struggle to put food on the table. They had low academic achievements. They struggled academically in school. Many of the children were in P3, P4, and P5, and they had difficulties writing full sentences when we were working together in the drama. And many of them felt that they were stuck. They were stuck in a place and they couldn't get out of it. Bullying was part of the cause. If you're a younger kid, if you're a smaller child, you will be bullied, and there's no other way of playing together. The older children see it as, or the bigger children see it as a space that they could dominate, and younger children just had to be subservient to them. So in the drama process, the space was created for them to rethink. When we were making theatre together, I asked them, if we were to create a neighborhood, what would that neighborhood look like? What can this new neighborhood look like? And the children draw on this big piece of mahjong paper that they were given. They did a collaborative and collective drawing. All of them got together, they lay on the floor, and then they started to draw. They were very proud of the neighborhood that they lived in, actually. They felt a sense of loyalty and belonging in this space, because this is a space that they know very dearly, and these are people in the neighborhood whom they are very familiar with. So they wanted to recreate the same neighborhood. And they drew flowers, apple trees, unicorns, rainbows, everything that was beautiful. Very contradictory to the kind of images that they were performing when I was trying to get to know them. Very different from the images of loan sharks, very different from the images of gang fights and bullying that they were performing earlier. They wanted a beautiful neighborhood. They wanted a neighborhood with beautiful things. And it didn't matter during the drama program or the play building or the theatre program that apple trees may not be able to grow in Singapore. We don't have unicorns. It didn't matter because it was right for them. They wanted their neighborhood to have all these beautiful things. And then the children reflected and they said, Miss Jennifer, now all we do is fight. But we also want to show people what we can do. There was that moment of reflection where they felt that things could be different, that it didn't have to carry on like that. They didn't have to live with the negativity. They didn't have to live with what is considered the norm. So the children showed me images of helping each other. Then what happens when somebody gets bullied? What can the rest of us do? Can we support each other? How do we do that? And because they had very low levels of spoken English, it therefore demanded them to show through a very embodied process what helping looked like. So they didn't describe it. They had to perform it. The children also wanted to show other people that they have got talent, because they knew that at the end of that whole theatre making process, that play building process, we're going to invite audience. And the children were very excited about that. They decided that only wanted to invite their neighbors and their friends from the neighborhood. They wanted their families to come and watch this drama program that they have participated in, and they have a performance at the end. It was a very short performance of about 10 minutes. But they wanted to show the neighbors, they wanted to show their family what they were capable of. And so the children decided amongst themselves what kind of talent shows they want to put into this performance. The image on the left on your screen, you will see that the boys were practicing breakdancing because this was something that they're really good at. The girls decided that they wanted to sing, and at that time in 2014, I think Frozen was all the rage, and the girls have memorized the dance, the moves from the movie, from the cartoon, and they were singing and they were dancing to Let It Go. So this was an opportunity for the children to show a side of themselves that might not have been completely visible or available to people in the neighborhood, to their neighbors, and even to their family. Even in a small game like the one that you're seeing on the screen right now, in this image, the children paired up and they were playing the game, The Blind Card. So for those of us who are in drama, you might be familiar with Boal's games, where the blind card, you partner up with somebody, and then your partner in front is blindfolded, and the person behind you directs you by tapping you on your back. So if I tap you on the top of your back, you move forward, and if I tap you at the bottom of your back, you move backwards, and then right shoulder, you turn right, and then left shoulder, you turn left. And it was a very simple game like that, where they paired up and then they had to move their partners across this space, this very tight space that we had in the VWO's office. And the children showed themselves to be somebody who could be caring, who could be very responsible. Um, it was a big deal for them because these are children who have always been very, who had identities, who carried the identities of being naughty. They have always been told they were naughty, they were rowdy, and they fight. Throughout the entire drama program, there wasn't a single session where a fight didn't erupt and we had to break it up. But in the 10 minutes when they were playing this game, they demonstrated that they could be responsible because there was somebody whose safety was in your hands. So you have to direct your friend in front of you to make sure that he or she doesn't knock into someone else or did not knock over the furniture. So there was an opportunity for them to show responsible and care, to show a different identity from the one that many people have known them. So understanding the product of play building program with a community is about the play located within the community. These were opportunities for the children to show the people in their environment a different person. This image was taken at the end of their performance, and it's a significant and important moment for these children. All of them standing in a straight line, taking a bow to a room full of families and friends and neighbors was significant for these children who otherwise had limited or no opportunities at that moment to perhaps stand on the stage and perform. They had no other opportunities for some of them, for their parents to actually see what talents they had, what other achievements that they had. So that moment when they stood in front of a room full of audience was a very proud moment for many, many of them. And it was also a moment of affirmation from the families because the families uh, gave comments, the families applauded them, the families encouraged them to perform again. So they did the exact same performance twice. And in the eyes of the community, these children, for that moment, for that day, for those 10 minutes, they were not just naughty children in the community, they were artists, they were actors, and it was a completely different identity. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've come to the end, and I would like to. Some of people here are asking about specific strategies, actually, how to integrate it in special needs education, and some resources that they can use actually to do this, especially the play building, Jennifer, yeah, for their children in the schools, especially with those with disabilities and low cognition, you know, how that can be used, or if you have any resources that can be shared. Yeah. So I think we can try to see how we can take this conversation outside of this webinar. Each of us, you can approach us. There are still a lot of other contributors, to this volume who may be able to help us answer questions and have other specific examples actually, from other works as well. So I would really suggest that you check out those books because there are a lot more rich studies that are there that we can only represent, in this short amount of time. Okay. Yes. So I think I need to wrap this up and thank you so much, Karen and Jennifer and Billion.